Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Alex and I like to talk about books. I actually have an account on the Clock app, and that's how I got it started doing book reviews through video. I also have a blog that I've had for 6 or 7 years, and I don't think people read blogs anymore. Yeah, I don't think people read blogs anymore. So the reason I started a YouTube channel is because on the Clock app, I can't really get into details about why I like books or why I like specific books or things like that. Everything is very, short. So I thought I'd hop over to YouTube and see how this plays out. So we're gonna start my first video with what I read in March. Let me know if the traffic noise is too much. I'm in my office upstairs and we live right next to a highway, so if it's too loud up here then I'll have to come up with another space. But let me know in the comments if it's too loud or distracting. I'm really used to it, but yeah. I literally have to sit here with my computer like right in front of my face because I can't remember how to say this name. I'm not gonna say it right. The first book I read in March is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. Like I said, I probably did not say that right. But let's get into what I thought about it. So we follow this young schoolgirl, Katee, as she grows up in a boarding school in England. And it all seems very normal, very, teen romance, teen love, all that. And until we sort of realize that these kids aren't just in some normal boarding school. The reason they're in this specific boarding school is because they're going to eventually be organ donors, like for their entire organs. And that's the whole point of the book, is that they're eventually going to donate all of their vital organs. And so I was really excited about this book. And it follows Katee and her two friends as they grow up and grow into their roles as adults. I was really thinking this book was going to be a lot more science fiction and like explain the whole process and why they were doing this and where they came from. And in this new world, are we somehow needing more organs or something? Are we like all really sick and that's the reason why we need more organ donors? We never get into it. We never get into any of that. Basically, this book is just about Katee and how she finds her place in the world as a bred organ donor. If you look at it like that, this book is actually pretty good. The characters I really loved, and one of the characters you kind of love to hate, so I think it works. The writing is extremely cyclical. Like Katee will be saying, oh, we were sitting by this tree, but first let me tell you why this tree is so important. And then she'll go off on a tangent about why this tree is very, very important to them all of a sudden. And the entire book is written that way. So the pace is a little, slow. And like I said, I think the book had a lot of potential if it was going to go the science fiction route, but for me, I didn't love it. So I think I gave this one a 3 out of 5 just because I was hoping more for a science fiction book. Okay, so the next book I read was Desperate Measures by Katee Robert, and this is part of the Wicked Villain series, and I was really into it. So first off, it is like a smutty version of Jasmine and Jafar. So we all know, like in the Disney princess film Aladdin, that, Aladdin gets the girl and Jafar is this like big villain. Well, in this book, Jafar is actually her father's right-hand man, and they stage a coup and they take over his business. It read more like kind of a mafia book than anything. So he takes over and he takes Jasmine captive. And the way they wrote Jasmine in this book, I loved it. Because she wasn't just some sad little trapped girl. Like, she had her own mind, she had her own fiery spirit, and she was not going to be happy just being stuck with Jafar, even though he made her very happy. Even though he made her, you know, happy, she wasn't going to settle for being in just another pretty cage. And the ending was very, very, very satisfying for me. Just a little heads up, there is brat play in this book, and there is a trigger warning on the very first page that says this book contains non-consensual, consensual, sexual acts. So take that as you will. I think I gave this a 4 out of 5 because the ending was so good, and I think because they wrote Jasmine very well. So yes, I really enjoyed that one, and I'm going to be looking into the rest of the series as it follows the rest of the Disney princess villains and their own escapades and things like that. Moving on, I'm also not going to say this right, but the next book is The Marrow Thieves by Cherie Dimaline, and she is an Indigenous author, and I absolutely love this book. This book is another book in a series, and it follows Frenchie in a kind of post-apocalyptic world where the Indigenous people are hunted for their bone marrow. The world has forgotten how to dream, or they can't dream anymore. And the cure lies in the bone marrow of Indigenous peoples. And so it all starts out very harmless, you know, like, oh, we'll bring you in for testing, it's not a big deal. And then it turns into a full-fledged, like, hunting expedition for anyone with Indigenous blood. And we're sort of getting into the tail end of it, where Indigenous people have started to group together and run and try to build communities and things like that. I really love the writing, the urgency in this book. I loved that we started with Frenchie when he was like 14 or 15, and we end with Frenchie when he's like 18-ish. They're not really specific about ages, but that's just kind of how I figured it up in my head. The way that they wrote the cultures in this book, because many of these people are from separate tribes. They've never met until now. The way that they've written it was just so beautiful to me. I'm really looking forward to the second book. The way that they ended the first book was just so perfect. Like, it didn't leave you on a cliffhanger. It wrapped it up so beautifully, but it opened the door for another book. So I'm really excited for the next one. If you get a chance to read this book, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. This was probably my favorite book this month. Okay, the last book I read was Opening Up by Lauren Dane, and it follows PJ, who works with her family at a tire sales corporation. And she wants to branch off and do her own thing, and she's kind of like the black sheep of the family, and they sort of like don't approve of anything that she's done with her life. And so that's PJ. She's just the black sheep. And then we have Asa Barons, who owns a restoration garage. And basically, you know, he's this big, muscly, like, tattooed, piercing, rides motorcycles and fast cars guy. And obviously, they kind of hit it off and they want to start something. This is a smutty book. It's very easy to read. There's not a lot to it. Honestly, I thought the character arcs were a little weak. Asa could do no wrong, and neither could PJ, and that kind of made for boring read for me. I thought the sex scenes were fun, but it got old after a while. This is also part of a series as they make their way through the other male members of the body shop, and them finding women, basically. I'm not eager to start the rest of them, just because I thought this storyline fell a little... I did like that PJ, the main female character, she was a very independent woman. Like, she didn't need Asa for anything. Like, she didn't need him to validate her work. She didn't need him to support her. She didn't need him to take care of her. She wanted him in her life. And I like that storyline better. So, I think they did a really good job on PJ, but it was a fine book. It was fine. So, that's what I read for March, and I've already got my April reads going. I already read one book in April that I really enjoyed, so I'm looking forward to that. So let me just talk a little bit about myself if you've made it all the way to the end of this video. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I have 3 kids. I've been reading since I was a kid. I'm in the middle of writing a book. It's been fun, and I plan on querying later this year. Basically, I just like talking about books with other people.